A point-in-time count is not just a count. Every 3 years, it also includes a detailed survey that sheds light on the nature of homelessness in the community, who is affected by it, and what its causes are. It provides insight into what supports are needed to help people exit homelessness and prevent others from experiencing it. When asking the survey questions, it helps to know what information the questions are looking for. Understanding the intention of the questions makes it easier to capture the right information and provide clarification on questions for people who are responding to the survey. In this video, we will go through the core questions that will be asked by all participating communities, their purpose, and what you should know when asking them. First, there are some things you should keep in mind while conducting the survey. Do your best to use the wording of the questions on the form. This creates consistency in the data collection throughout your community and across the country. At the same time, you may have to clarify the meaning of some questions. Some questions include prompts or explanations on the survey form. If it seems like the respondent does not understand the question, do your best to explain what it is looking for using these prompts. If you're unsure how to capture a response and you're filling in a paper survey, you can provide notes in the margins to describe the response. These notes will help those who are entering the data into a database to know how to categorize the responses. There may also be times when surveys turn into conversations, and you may get an answer early on to a question that comes later in the survey. In this case, it's okay to simply verify the response you're entering with the respondent when you arrive at that question. Finally, there may be times where it is clear that the respondent is not comfortable with the question. Respondents can skip questions at any time, for any reason, or they can choose to stop the survey altogether. Now, let's get to the survey questions.
Where are you staying tonight? Or, where did you stay last night?
This is a screening question that also provides information about where people are sleeping on the night of the count. In some communities, you will ask about last night instead of tonight. Your survey form will have the correct wording. This question is specifically asking about the night of the count, so if someone has been staying in shelter over the past week, but is sleeping outside on the night of the count, you would mark down none sheltered in a public space or encampment, depending on the details provided. If the respondent is not sure about where they will be spending the night, ask follow-up questions to confirm whether they will be outside, in a shelter, or somewhere else. Understanding where people are sleeping is vital to understanding of the experience of homelessness. If someone stays in more than one location overnight, ask them where they will spend the most time.
Have you spent at least one night in any of the following locations in the past year?
The purpose of this question is to better understand whether people experiencing homelessness access shelter, experience hidden homelessness, or move in and out of different overnight locations throughout the year. The question includes the night of the count, so you can begin by checking off the location identified in the screening question. For example, if you are doing the survey with someone who is staying in a shelter that night, you can check off homeless shelter right away.
Do you have family members or anyone else who was staying with you tonight? Or, did any family members or anyone else stay with you last night?
Like the previous question, in some communities, this question will ask about last night instead of tonight. The purpose of this question is to identify whether respondents are experiencing homelessness with partners or children on the night of the pit count, or whether they have anyone else staying with them. Responses provide important information about families and children experiencing homelessness. If two partners complete the survey, try to group their survey information together using their partner's anonymous survey identifier so that children are not double counted. Keep in mind that this question is asking about people who are with the respondent on the night of the count or the night before the detailed survey is administered. A respondent may have a dependent or partner, but if they were not together on the night in question, they wouldn't be included.
How old are you? Or, what year were you born?
The purpose of this question is to understand the age of people experiencing homelessness in order to support planning for age-specific supports. If someone is having trouble remembering their age, you can ask them what year they were born.
For this survey, homelessness means any time when you have been without a permanent and secure place to live, including sleeping in shelters, sleeping on the streets, or living temporarily with others without having your own permanent housing, for example, couch surfing.
This script is intended to explain what is meant by the term homelessness for the purpose of the detailed survey. Sometimes people interpret homeless to mean only situations where people are sleeping in shelters or outside on the street. For this survey, homeless can apply to other situations, like couch surfing as well. Read this script to respondents so that they understand the scope of the following questions and don't leave out any of their experiences of homelessness.
In total, how much time have you experienced homelessness over the past year?
This question provides information on the respondent's total recent experience of homelessness. It contributes to the understanding of chronic or long-term homelessness. This question can be difficult to answer, but the answer does not have to be exact. You can help the respondent by asking them to think back to where they were staying this time last year and where they have lived since then. Another way to prompt responses is to ask whether the respondent stayed in secure housing during the year.
In total, for how much time have you experienced homelessness over the past 3 years?
This question provides more information on the respondent's total recent experience of homelessness. It contributes to the understanding of chronic or long-term homelessness. Chronic homelessness means experiencing homelessness for over 6 months in the last year, and or multiple episodes of homelessness comprising more than half of the previous 3 years. Like the previous question, answers to this question do not have to be exact. It may be helpful to ask the respondent about their most recent housing.
How old were you the first time you experienced homelessness?
This question helps to identify at what point in life people are most at risk for their first experience of homelessness. This can include any episodes of family homelessness respondents may have experienced as a child. This information supports planning for services that prevent homelessness.
Did you come to Canada as an immigrant, refugee, asylum claimant, for example, applied for refugee status after coming to Canada, or through another process? If yes, how long have you been in Canada?
This question identifies the risk that people might experience homelessness upon arrival in Canada. This question is not about someone's current citizenship status, so it would include someone who came as a refugee and who is now a citizen. It may not be clear to the respondent what the difference is between a refugee and an asylum claimant. A refugee has applied for and is granted refugee status before arriving in Canada. Refugees then have access to some supports that are not available to asylum claimants who submit a claim after arriving in Canada.
How long have you been in this community? If a length of time given, where did you live before you came here?
This question provides an indication of the number of recent arrivals to the community, who may not be aware of the services that are available. It also gives a sense of the level of movement between communities and can support community planning. If the respondent frequently moves between communities, you can ask when they most recently came to this community and where they were living just before coming. Other respondents may have been born in the community, but may have moved back from having lived somewhere else. They should still provide the last place they lived.
Do you identify as First Nations? With or without status? Métis, or Inuit?
The wording of this question might be modified for your community. Its purpose is to provide information about the experience of homelessness among Indigenous peoples and support community planning for culturally specific programs.
In addition to your response in the question above, do you identify with any of the racial identities listed below?
This question provides information about the experience of homelessness among racialized groups. A list of response options will be read or shown to individuals. Note that more than one response option can be selected.
Have you ever served in the Canadian military or RCMP?
This question provides information on homelessness experienced by veterans and the supports they may need. The Canadian military includes the Navy, Army, Air Force, regular and reserve, and Army Rangers, including those who only completed basic training. Veterans of the Canadian military and RCMP may be eligible for benefits from Veterans Affairs Canada.
As a child or youth, were you ever in foster care or in a youth group home?
This question is asking specifically about experience in the child welfare system. The wording of this question might be different in your community to be consistent with provincial programs and supports. It is important to note that the question is not asking about experiences in other types of group homes, such as halfway houses or recovery centers. The results from this question can help to inform homelessness prevention programs for youth who are aging out of care.
Have you been experiencing difficulties related to any of the following? Illness or medical condition, physical mobility, learning, intellectual, developmental, or cognitive function, acquired brain injury, mental health, substance use, senses such as seeing or hearing.
This question asks respondents to indicate whether they identify experiencing a number of health and accessibility challenges. Read the examples given on the survey form to help explain what falls under each category. Keep in mind that the question is asking whether the respondent identifies that this is a health or accessibility challenge for them. As with all of the questions, if the respondent is uncomfortable answering, they can skip the question.
What gender do you identify with?
The question asks for the respondent's gender identity. Responses to this question provide demographic information to support service and program planning. You are encouraged to show the respondent the list of response options. You don't need to read out the response options unless the respondent asks you to. Some respondents may be uncomfortable with the question. They might want to point to their response option rather than giving their response verbally, or skip the question entirely.
How do you describe your sexual orientation? For example, straight, gay, lesbian?
The question asks for the response sexual identity or orientation. Like other demographic questions, responses to this question support service and program planning. As with gender identity, you are encouraged to show the respondent the list of response options. Some respondents may wish to point to their response option rather than giving their response verbally. They can also skip the question if they wish.
What happened that caused you to lose your housing most recently?
This question is asking respondents about the factors that might have contributed to their most recent housing loss. This could mean their own apartment or house, or their parents' house if they were youth. Housing, in this case, would not include shelter stays or transitional housing, because a lot of things can contribute to housing loss. Select any of the items on the form that are related to the response. If the respondent just says that they were evicted or that they chose to leave, ask follow-up questions to identify what led to that event. Generally, it is good to confirm the responses that you're recording on the form with the respondent.
Was your most recent housing loss related to an eviction?
This is a follow-up to the previous question regarding the respondent's most recent housing loss.
How long ago did that happen, that you lost your housing most recently?
This question relates only to the respondent's most recent housing loss. This will help to establish the length of their current episode of homelessness.
What are your sources of income?
This question asks respondents to identify any source of income they normally receive. This can include employment income, informal sources of income, or various sources of support from government or agencies. Show the list or read it to the respondents to make sure all sources are captured. Doing this helps to remind respondents of income they receive less frequently, like family and child tax benefits. If the respondent hesitates to respond, you can remind the respondent that the survey is anonymous. Some people may have concerns about being associated with particular responses. This completes the common questions that are asked by all participating communities across the country. The advice and explanations in this video are intended to help you as you conduct the survey with people experiencing homelessness. Thank you for participating in this effort to understand homelessness in your community and across Canada. To see how the information from Point in Time Counts contributes to the national understanding of homelessness, visit housing-infrastructure.canada.ca. About reaching home. Canada's homelessness strategy